lawless global movement made for more than a decade of scandals and conspiracies and blacklisting me because I'm a lawful whistleblower. A whistleblower against MK Ultra, Voodoo, FCC, TV spy breach, ELF mind control, radiation towers, and frequency flyers used to violate human rights to privacy, my rights. Some would say, why am I a person of interest? That I would be blacklisted, that I would be conspiracized against, that I would be ostracized in society, in communities. Because they made a game, a global movement game, from terrorizing me because I knew too much. I'm a lawful whistleblower, but I'm also a survivor of rape crimes and NFL abuse from my ex-retired NFL Raider Lester Hayes. San Francisco Giants conspiracies, because I sang flawlessly at the Giants game many years ago in '98 when they were beginning to evolve their MK Ultra programs against society. And I'm also a survivor of police brutality. Davis, California police brutality for risking my life for my black ex-boyfriend during racial profiling, and I'm multiracial. Some would ask, well, why is that an issue for being blacklisted? Because I also look white. And during this time of 2008, right before Obama was elected into office, there were underground movements to change the world to New World Order, to flip society, and to reverse prejudice. And part of that was to elevate black and brown coalition and bring about pyramid worship. The same thing that you see on your money, on your currency, about the pyramids and Eye of Ra, are the same elements that are forcing societies to come together in cult membership with codes. You see them representing the Diamond Code and the Pyramid Code, and talking about Beast Mode and Eye of Ra. These are all elements of a cult membership of Illuminati that goes hundreds of years back. And in this time, in the millennial that we are living in, this is the generation where New World Order and pyramid worship are coming together, because MK Ultra, Voodoo, and the empire of Egypt, that was the strongest empire of the world in the beginning, is coming back. These are part of the movements that started when Obama was elected into office. Now, Obama was elected into office because Bush is related to Obama in the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati, and that is why he got elected into office. Now, this was, of course, important because when Bush was at his ending years, he was getting a lot of backlash from the black community about Hurricane Katrina. So when Obama became president, this did help Bush slightly. People don't know that they are related, but they are from the 13 bloodlines. That is the only way any president ever makes it into presidency is because he has or she has a connection to the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati. And we have yet to see a female be president related to the 13 bloodlines. But the point of reference is that during the Bush administration in 9/11 was when George Bush announced programming and New World Order during the time of war against the Middle East. He declared war against the Middle East because he was trying to follow in his father's footsteps and complete the war that began in the 90s against the Middle East. Now, this is important because a lot of what is happening in the world is happening because the Illuminati groups have taken the Bible and made their own version of the Bible. So they believe in prophecy, but they also manipulate prophecy so that when anything happens, they can manipulate it in a way that they want to make it happen. Right now, we are living in a time that is so dangerous because so much corruption is being revealed. For instance, MK Ultra really began in World War II, when the Eiffel Towers were being used against Germans in World War II and mind manipulation. This is when this type of violation of humanity was used against society. And that is why television programming was created. It was created globally for the same purpose of violating programming and manipulating and mind control. This type of programming allows celebrities and the elite to program society, manipulate their thoughts, and ultimately use as propaganda and a marketing tool to keep the economy going as an advertisement. There are so many layers to their corruption and their purposes for that corruption. We now live in a generation where the court system does not abide by rule and letter of law, but abides by corrupt agenda code. Agenda code that can be anything from making codes with colors and numbers to making codes with certain things that are said that are used in a way that benefit the court system rather than society as a whole, rather than the person that is seeking relief and justice is not important to the court. What is important is their own agenda and how that is reflected upon the court and not about rule and letter of law, which is why the Constitution was created in the first place, to allow human rights to be equally given to society, to Americans. We see so much corruption now that American has become a bad word. Illegal immigrants coming in and stealing resources from homeless Black and white Americans. such as HUD housing, EBT food stamps, free education grants, free medical, $98 million from taxpayers' money has recently been given to illegal immigrants to have free medical, while a homeless person can't even get a pot to piss in, nor less free medical, because they don't have an address. They are punished, they are ostracized, and criminalized for not having a home. And yet, when an illegal immigrant comes here to the United States, is automatically given the resources to get free housing, free food, free education, free medical, and so on. Resources that belong to the impoverished and homeless Americans are being completely depleted because of the bullshit rhetoric of migration, saying that the United States was made from immigrants, when every nation was made from a migration process, and every nation has strict border policies to keep their nation safe and to keep provisions available for their people. When you talk about Black Lives Matters groups, and you talk about Brown and Black Coalition, and you talk about why is it that the Washington Post stated that 63% of white Americans were brutalized and or killed from cops, and only 33% were black, and the remaining percent various races, including multiracial. At the highest number of people brutalized or killed from police are Caucasians, and yet they're not being talked about because of the underground movements. You will rarely see an incident where any other race, except for the black race, is being brutalized from police and or killed. And yet that is simply not the case. You look at a scenario of Rachel Dawson, a woman that was president of the NAACP, that was outed as a white woman posing as a black woman. Rachel Dawson had black children, mixed children, but they looked black, trying to represent for her children as a strong woman in her community, somebody that they can identify with and be proud of, was fired and humiliated in front of the entire world, shamed and discriminated against from the NAACP and the black community for fighting for the rights of the black community. The black community that has taken money from white people to fund the NAACP. The NAACP, that is a civil rights organization that speaks of Martin Luther King Jr. as their inspiration. Martin Luther King Jr. believed in equal protection of rights for every race, every color, every creed, and every gender. Martin Luther King Jr. was not about excluding. He was about including. His fights for equal protection of rights were so vast that he won the Nobel Peace Prize for fighting for the rights of garbage men, poor black garbage men, poor white garbage men that were picking up people's trash and being labeled as nobodies, being underpaid and disrespected. He fought for those men to get a decent wage and to have some level of respect, doing a job that nobody else wanted to do, and won a Nobel Peace Prize. A lot of people don't know about that because they just think of him as marching and speaking about, I had a dream. What was his dream? His dream was that the humbled will be exalted, was that the lowly will be exalted, and that people of all races will be able to join at a table of bounty together. This idea, an ideal that he fought for, is not a shared ideal of the current African American community. You look at Sister Circle TV, they spew rhetoric of racism in almost every segment of their show, promoting black skin only matters. You will rarely see any other race on their show except for black. They blatantly talk about discriminating against white people in a way that makes it look like they're not discriminating. When you talk about the same scenario of an old woman from Oklahoma getting brutalized from a cop, it was not important to them. It was not important to Sister Circle. An old white woman that had children and grandchildren, brutalized, tasered, disoriented, confused, and terrorized from a police officer during a traffic stop in Oklahoma. And instead of Sister Circle TV supporting that woman like they would support every other black person being brutalized, they said that that woman deserved it. And they diminished her rights as a human being by saying that that woman didn't have 5 cops on her, like a black felon would have running at the scene of a crime. See, I remember a similar story that was spoke of where a black woman was brutalized from a cop during a traffic stop. And 5 cops did not show up. It was only the one cop, just like with the white woman. It was horrible what he did to the black woman, and much talked about amongst the black community a few years ago. Both women were about the same age. And there wasn't anybody that was saying that it was the black woman's fault for being brutalized. They did not question not one moment that she was being racially profiled and violated and terrorized. And yet, the same thing happened to the white woman. The white woman was obese, old, and like the black woman, was argumentative during a traffic stop. Both women did not deserve to get brutalized. They merely were questioning the citation and was brutalized. But to the black community, the same crime happening to a white-skinned person is not the same crime to them. Because why? They want to take the credit for taking down police. Stephon Clark of Sacramento, about 10 minutes from where I live, Black Lives Matter groups, Al Sharpton, Common, Nick Cannon, came out here supporting Stephon Clark. Stephon Clark's family did not even call 911 when they heard the gunshots of cops killing Stephon Clark in his own backyard where his family was living. Nobody even called 911 to help him. And then when they screamed racism at the rallies for Stephon Clark, it was a black cop that was pulling the trigger. His family later went to the black cop's wedding to crash his wedding. And people filmed them crashing his wedding right after they were screaming racism. Society didn't know that there were any black cops involved killing Stephon Clark, allegedly. But it was a black cop. There were two cops, and one of them was black, pulling the trigger numerous times. Allegedly. There were so many unspoken things and details about the Stephon Clark case. Do you know that they are refusing to prosecute the cops that killed Stephon Clark, but yet gave the family $2.5 million? Stephon Clark was a felon. He was on his way home and decided to break into a bunch of people's cars and steal their things from their cars while on his way home. He saw the cops. He started running. He hopped over his fence, and they shot him in his own backyard with his family in the house. How can you be in the house and not know that gunshots are going off in your own backyard and not call the cops, not call 911, not call somebody? The other interesting thing about that is that Ferguson police killed a young 18-year-old during racial profiling. A young 18-year-old that had just robbed a store and beaten up an Asian guy that owned the store. When the cops found him walking in the middle of the street, the cop killed the young black man, a teenager. That's where the theme, hands up, don't shoot, because he had his hands up. Did he deserve to die? No. Did Stephon Clark deserve to die? No. Are there questions about how much of the things that were said on the media are true when they refuse to report other people of other races that are dying from police brutality? That this is not a racial issue, but this is a people, a society issue. When the black community wants to take all the credit. I made Grace's Law, No Taser Law, and Police Reform Law in 2008, and I have been lobbying that law ever since. In 2010, Misha Manj Arizari of San Francisco, a drug narcotic commissioner who had had her son killed from police, an illegal immigrant, a Bosconian illegal immigrant, had her son, whom was mentally ill, killed from police. So they made her a commissioner of San Francisco. She was a narcotic commissioner who lobbied to make pot legal. She worked with ACLU often, and I was told to go to Misha Manjarazari because they were the Cop Watch Accountability Project of Northern California. So I spent months conversing, talking on the phone and email, and during that time I wrote Grace's Law. After I realized that Misha Manjarazari not only was a PA commissioner, but was also connected to some of the riffraff in my community that were my enemies, that do drugs, that were harassing me, and that have cop family. See, when I was brutalized from cops, I was brutalized not only because I risked my life for my black ex-boyfriend during racial profiling, but as a result of retaliation from the Davis police because I had reported their family, their drug trafficking, child abusing, vandal, gang-affiliated family related to DPD Zuniga, Figueroa, and Garcia, to name a few. Now, cops are a brotherhood, so I've endured a lot of harassment during the years. In 2010, a taser law was passed in San Francisco, very similar to the taser law that I wrote in 2008. The ACLU helped pass that law because I told Misha Manjarazari about that law. After much harassment from Misha during correspondence and certain language that was spoken to me and being harassed because I realized her connections with my community, I went to Gavin Newsom. I went to David Chu of San Francisco. I emailed them Grace's Law, and I spoke of the harassments of Misha Manjarazari. I then filed an administrative claim against the city. only to be dismissed and ignored. Recently, Gavin Newsom passed a law for Black Lives Matters and the Black and Brown Coalition of police reform to lessen the violent crimes and hold police accountable for their misconduct. Such language in the law that he passed, the bill that he passed, was the same language that I wrote in Grace's No Taser Law. I could say all sorts of things about being blacklisted. The very fact that every attorney that I have called has denied representing me. Every attorney and the ACLU. That the NAACP Betty Williams, that is also connected with the ACLU, promised to help me. She promised to represent me and referred me to a Peter Brixey. They said that a Mark Marin attorney would help me. They refused to help me. They lied. I have this correspondence on email of them telling me that they were going to represent me and then going back and saying, never said that I would do that. I called Betty Williams. On a particular night where cops were outside stalking me, a bunch of cars, cop cars, harassing me. This was right after I had been brutalized from police. And I asked for Betty Williams to help me. She said that she was in a meeting and started laughing. I don't know what possibly could have been going through her mind. Did she think I was Richard Pryor? Did she think I was Eddie Murphy? Offering her some ice cream and an EBT food stamp? I don't know what could have been going through her mind.